And welcome back to Nancy's Neighborhood. And I told you not to go away. We have two guests today, and the first one's here with me right now, Dr. Tammy Johnson, and she is principal or whatever you want to call yourself at
Director.
Ludic School, director. And I asked her to be on because this is National Autism Month, and I wanted us to talk about autism. I wanted to talk about the Ludic School. And first of all, Tammy, tell them what the Ludic School is.
Okay. Ludic is a private school for students on the autism spectrum or who have similar conditions. And we're housed on the Lee University campus, so we fall under the College of Education. And this is our 18th year as a private school.
Wow.
So we serve students who need something extra,
That they're not going to get in public education. Now, Ludic it's all capital letters, L-U-D-I-C, and that
Yes.
stands for?
Lee University Developmental Inclusion Classroom.
Very good, okay. I knew part of that, didn't know all of it. But I don't know whether you're aware of this, I taught special education years and years and years ago.
Right.
And I'm sure that I had autistic children in my special ed because I had the multiply handicapped,
Right.
ages 4 to 21.
Right.
And so a whole lot of things fell into that category.
Right.
But we didn't have autism defined then.
Right.
So when basically did we start defining autism and realizing that there was an educational aspect to autism that we needed to address?
Well, it's probably been known since the early 1900s, but it wasn't recognized really in school. So what we see now, we have this rapid increase in the prevalence of autism. So the thought is that there truly is some increase, but we're seeing some students who were previously diagnosed as either having emotional disturbance or intellectual disability, which we used to refer to as mental retardation. So some students have just switched from what would have been one category to a different category now.
Because we've actually recognized autism.
Right.
And you said the autism spectrum. Now, give everybody just a little clue.
Okay.
Don't go too far in depth
Okay.
with some of us that don't,
Okay.
but I really think it would be interesting for people to know that there are different areas of autism, and it does run an entire spectrum
Right.
of the differences.
Right. So there are several different conditions on the autism spectrum, and I will only mention probably 3. So there's classic autism. So if you think about autism, you might think of an individual who doesn't speak and who rocks their body and flaps their hands and does, different types of what we call STEMs or self-stimulatory behaviors. And that's really where the word autism came from, somebody who's almost like in a bubble and kind of absorbed in their own world. So the definition of autism is self. Then there's PDD-NOS. So to receive a diagnosis of autism, a school psychologist or another type of psychologist, clinical psychologist, looks through a checklist and says, yes, the student performs these behaviors, these behaviors, these behaviors. So if there are enough of those, then they receive a diagnosis of autism. Then if they have some of the characteristics but not as many, as they would need to be diagnosed as autism, they are diagnosed as PDD-NOS, which is pervasive developmental disorder not otherwise specified.
Oh my goodness, okay.
Yes. So that's some of the characters of autism. So a lot of those kids do speak. And then the highest condition on the autism spectrum is Asperger's syndrome, and probably people are very familiar with that. We see a lot of characters on TV shows now who really manifest as having Asperger's syndrome.
I've had several friends who have had children, adults now, who were Asperger and graduated from college,
Yes.
have great jobs,
Right.
working engineering and these things that, and I noticed that in growing up, these children who are now adults don't make eye contact.
Right.
And they're very bashful, or not really necessarily bashful, they're just unattentive to what maybe is going on around them. And I
Right.
know my friends would always say, look
Right,
at, and try
Right.
to get them to do that. But I think now that you've said that, I had one young man in my class at Calhoun who, as I know now about this, he would sit with a pair of scissors and just spin them and watch them spin. And when they stopped, he would giggle, and then we'd spin them
Do it
again. and I kept thinking, there has got to be something as a special education teacher that I can do with this child.
Right.
But it wasn't part of what we were trained to do at the time.
Right. It's very specific training, really, that's most effective for individuals on the autism spectrum.
And now, you all are basically close to one-on-one with your students.
We are. The
Okay.
overall ratio is one teacher for every 2 students, and there are some students who receive one-on-one.
And that's due to the different variations of what they have.
Right.
Now, you don't just have Cleveland students.
No, we have contracts with Cleveland City Schools, Bradley County Schools, Polk County School System, Athens City, McMinn County, and Dayton City.
Okay. Now, you don't run a bus service.
No.
So it's the parents' obligation to get them here every day.
Cleveland City and Bradley County do provide bus
Okay.
service for the parents who want that, but if they're outside of Cleveland, then the parents are responsible for providing transportation.
And I heard either last year or the year before about a family who had specifically moved to Cleveland because they had an autistic child and wanted that child to go to the Ludic school.
Right.
So that is an availability also.
Yes, if the school system doesn't, as the IEP team decision, decide to place a student at Ludic, then parents could pay privately for their child to come.
Okay. Now, if a child transfers in from another system in Tennessee or out of Tennessee and brings their IEP, is that still the equivalent of being the IEP that we would have developed here? Or you have to go back through the school system to do that?
It's up to the individual school system as to
Okay.
what they want to do with that. There have been some cases where a student was in a similar program as what we have, and they'll honor that same IEP and send them to us. But otherwise, they're likely to try to include them in the school system first.
I understand that. Being on the county school board, I understand
Yes.
that we would like to include everybody we can. Now, how many other schools like Ludic are there around that you know of?
There's nothing else really in our greater Chattanooga area. There are some private schools in Atlanta, and Nashville has a few as well, but those would be the closest places you could go to a school that specializes in autism spectrum disorders and uses applied behavior analysis and particularly the verbal behavior model of ABA.
Now, let me ask you, you said 18 years, which that's phenomenal. I mean, I've known about you for maybe 10 years through
Right.
United Way and some
Right.
things like that. How did you become involved
With Ludic or with autism?
with autism?
Had a family member from our church who had a child diagnosed, so I became involved in some of the training with him very early on. And then there was another opportunity, and I just fell in love, with working with students on the spectrum, and especially in working in the field of applied behavior analysis. And just, that's where my heart is ever since then.
And you have a doctorate, and is that in psychology or?
It's in special education.
Okay, all right.
And then I did the coursework to become a board-certified behavior analyst, which is the gold standard, really, for the best treatment for students on the autism spectrum.
And then did you initiate the Ludic system here, the Ludic school? Okay.
No. Some will know and some will not. Dr. Debbie Murray is my sister.
Oh, I
and-
did not know
Yes.
that. Okay, great gal.
Yes,
Great gal.
she is. And she was instrumental in beginning the school. And she got together with Cleveland City, Bradley County, Polk County, and said, we had this idea for developing a lab school. And that's what they did. Started out with 5 to 7 students that first school year in one room. And it wasn't all students on the spectrum because we hadn't seen that huge increase in the prevalence rate at that time. And it has just grown, so fast over these years.
How many students do you have right now?
20.
20. So that means you have roughly 15 aides or teachers down the people that work with each individual student. Are they degreed special education teachers? Are they aides? How does this work?
most of our teachers have at least a bachelor's degree. Some have master's degrees.
Wonderful.
And teacher licensure. And then we have interns and teacher assistants as well. And not all of them have a teacher license.
Do you do any of the colleges around? Do they do practice teaching with you all? Is there anybody that wants to do that with autism, or
Right.
are they just going to do special education at the schools?
No, we sometimes have student teachers in special education from Lee. We haven't had anyone from someplace else. But being an ABA, the Applied Behavior Analysis program, I have an intern right now with me who's doing her internship through Penn State.
Oh,
She's doing her
wow.
program online there and is doing her practical hours with us at Ludic.
That's wonderful. So you all are pretty much known throughout the country.
I don't know if I would go that far.
The Southeast. Let's
The
stick with the
Southeast,
Southeast.
maybe.
Okay. Okay. Because I do know that people have said that there have been people that wanted to move into Cleveland, Bradley County because of their children who
Right.
have been diagnosed, and they just felt like this was the best opportunity for them to get an education.
Right.
And people understanding them and knowing how to work with them and how to assimilate them into real life.
Right.
And so now, I know you all are a United Way
Agency.
and that helps. But then, is there tuition or anything for students that come to Ludic?
Well, again, if it's an IEP team decision, and I won't explain that process, it's probably too lengthy to talk about, then the school system pays the tuition. But otherwise, it would be parent responsibility. And what we charge does not cover all the
I'm sure not.
expenses. Not,
I'm
not
sure
by
not.
any means, but
I'm sure
yes.
not, because when you're working one-on-one with 20 students or with 2 and 20, I mean, you're talking about a lot of people to man a classroom.
Right.
And then not only do you have the people work with it, but you probably have some aides and some other people that are doing
Right.
some other things. So, okay, is there anything you want to tell us about National Autism Month?
Yeah, it's really great for people to do some reading and try to become aware. Again, the prevalence rate is just increasing so frighteningly fast. So there's a lot of good information on the internet. The Autism Speaks website is very good, and the Autism Society of America is another great one. We have our new website going up very soon. I'm so pleased. We have our first AmeriCorps Vista team member who just came
Fantastic,
on.
yes.
And she's going to really help facilitate our public relations piece, which has not been something we've had a very strong presence of before.
What will your website be? Do you know?
It will be Lee University/Ludic.
Okay. So would that be a .org or a .com, or do we know yet? Have we?
I don't know
Okay,
yet.
that's not a problem.
Right.
And if you notice, Tammy has on blue, because blue is the color for autism, and I was going to stick a blue ribbon on me today, and the morning I had, folks, it's just a wonder I've got a shirt on. So anyway, but Tammy, thank you so much for being with us, because autism is, to a lot of people, it's something new.
Right.
Me, having been in special education, I'm familiar with it,
Right.
but the checklist that you said that they could go through to kind of see if someone exhibits, I have an acquaintance right now that I think may be high functioning and does a great job, not a problem.
Right.
But anyway, you know, it's just those things. And I hate to run around like a special education teacher diagnosing people, because that's not what I'm supposed to do. But anyway, I think it's an awareness that people need to have. So
Definitely.
thank you so much for being on with us today, and much success with this program.
Thank
18
you.
years, you've got a real good foundation going.
Thank you so much for having
Pleased
me.
for that situation over there. Ludic, L-U-D-I-C, folks. All right, don't go away. We'll be right back, because we're going to talk about some opportunities that you businesses have in Cleveland, Bradley County. So watch these commercials, support our sponsors, and we will be right back.